Try again.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Okay, here we go. First off, who do we have?
Steve, nice to meet you, Margaret.
I'm Sarah.
Okay, nice to meet you too. But let's start. You wanted to start with something, so let's start with that.
It's a little reservation of rights that I like to make before I make any kinds of statements. I'm making a reservation of rights under Article 1-308 of the Uniform Commercial Code. And as a Australian state national, having declared my political status on the international stage and recorded that status, I'm here as an unincorporated man on Victoria, one of the people.
And I also reserve my rights under 1-308 as an Australian state national, as one of the people recorded, and as my change of political status. Thank you.
Okay, so let's start here. We're here because of a tent. So how do we go with that? First off, the property's 50 acres big. When did you buy it?
About 3 years ago, August 22. We came from a little bit of a tumultuous situation, just briefly, where we had to hurriedly find somewhere to live. Having at that time 12 horses, probably 14 chickens, a couple of dogs, cats, that sort of thing, the usual menagerie of animals, and needed to find somewhere to relocate. So we chose this area and managed to find 50 acres, which we were looking for, and at the time had previously sold our last house and managed to buy this land. So we just had enough money to get it across the line. We bought the 50 acres.
And that's outright, so you owned it completely.
Correct, yeah. We owned it completely. So free of a mortgage, which was a nice feeling. But we were starting from scratch. We had a blank canvas, shall we say. So now it was up to us to figure out how we were going to build our life from there. Yeah.
And so first off, in no house, you decided to live in a tent.
Well, we didn't really decide. That was decided for us, really. Where else were we going to go with the animals? We needed to buy the land. The land actually found us. It wasn't on the market. It really did find us. So we were brought here, and all we had was our belongings and a tent, a camper van tent, pop-up tent, which we'd hardly used because we hadn't had a chance to. So in order to take care of ourselves, we put the tent up where we thought it was okay, and we started to live in that tent. A month after we'd sort of set up camp, as you like, we had some uninvited guests onto the land, and there were 2 representatives from what we discovered was council, telling us that we didn't seem to have a permit for camping on our land, and proceeded to take photographs of our tent, and subsequently sent us a report in the mail to our PO box address at the time, showing us the application and the reasons why you cannot camp on your own land, and that if we didn't pay the application fee, which was a non-refundable, I think of $180 at the time, that we would be up for a $350 fine, of which we wrote back and said, thank you very much for your offer. However, this is my land, and if I want to camp on my land, I shall do so. Steve did talk to them, the representatives, and did tell them that we were homeless at the time. Did we receive any sort of care package? Did they come back and say, we're really worried about you? No. So my letter to them was, thank you very much for the wonderful, welcome.
Now, you're not on any government handouts at all, are you? You're totally self-sufficient?
Not at all, completely self-sufficient. Yeah, no, not quite old enough for the pension just yet, but no kind of Centrelink support, nothing. So, and at that stage, it was coming towards the end of COVID. Our business had pretty much been shut down, as many people's had. So,
And your business was what?
it was doing height safety access. So you often see those cage ladders that go up the side of buildings, the platforms on the roofs to take care of air conditioners, that kind of thing. Yeah, so we ran that for about 5 or 6 years, and a lot of the work was through universities, that type of thing. So the restrictions came in pretty hard and heavy in those areas. So it got to the point where it wasn't any point operating anymore. So yeah, that was sort of the end of that.
And you lost your business as a bookkeeper, I believe?
I was working from home, yeah, and unfortunately I didn't agree with a certain medication that they wanted me to inject, and so therefore I was no longer required, you might say.
So both of you were officially kicked out of society, really?
Yeah.
Correct.
Well and truly kicked out of society, and then kicked out of our home, which then we hadn't anywhere to go, so we had to just become resilient and
Survive, yeah.
It was survival mode, absolutely.
And in survival mode, you buy this property with your own money, you don't owe anyone anything, it's your land, and then the government turns up and says you need permits for the tent to camp on your own land.
Yeah. And I didn't see anything on those on the stipulation of how they were going to provide us with camping facilities and things like that. So I deemed it that it wasn't really an appropriate question for us or to apply for a camping permit when there didn't seem to be any reason of what they were offering us. And the fact is, if we applied, they could say no, and then we'd be. Yeah. Anyway,
Then
clearly.
you'd be landowners, but nowhere to live.
No, that's right. We would be homeless again. So our letter back to them clearly made them go away.
Yeah. But they didn't go away. I take it they kept coming back.
They kept coming back. It took them a little while, but
It took them a long time.
yeah. By the way, that camping application fee was non-refundable if it wasn't approved. So yeah,
Maybe it wasn't approved. Now here is where you started learning about law. Is that correct? You were telling me in your tent you started learning. So you weren't like this before, or you were?
No. We started on well, look, we got to that point where we'd really, like a lot of people do in life. You've spent all your life towing the line, paying your taxes, doing all the right things, and here we are in our 50s, finally getting to a place where we want to spend the rest of our life, and we've kind of like just been pushed to the limit, if you like, and that was really the last straw.
Yeah.
It was like, really, you really want to come on here and tell us that we can't camp on our own land?
Well, you see, you have to understand as well. We had lost our jobs. We'd been thrown out of society. We were then kicked out of where we were living that we were trying to buy into so that we could help other people actually with meditation and horses. And then we were here in absolute survival mode, and it was winter. And people can recall that I thought, it's okay, it's the end of August, we'll be right. But that winter kept going, like September was winter still. So they came and it was cold and it was wet and it was miserable. But we'd also lost our deposit with the place we were trying to buy into. So now we have a solicitor who's not just allowing the finance clause to do what it's supposed to be intended, and has his client sign a rescission notice saying that we had caused the contract to end, which was false. So now we're without that money, which would have been helpful to buy something with a house already on it.
So that money was going to be used to build or get something to become a house.
Well, yeah. Well, we could have easily have bought something that had a house on it, but as it turned out, all we could afford, and because we'd sold in a good market. Of course, when you go to buy something else, and we had to buy land for the animals. What do you do with 10 to 12 horses, right? Like, the cost of keeping them at an adjustment centre is just not viable. So we are now, as you can see, we're in a tent where we're trying to work out how do we get this money back. Our lawyer that we had representing us all of a sudden has just disappeared off the face of the earth, and trying to find somebody else to fill that void to help us didn't seem to be working, to the point where I said to Steve, you know what, we have to do this ourselves.
So you started learning the law.
We did. Yeah, it's been...
Welcome to the end of the She'll Be Right era.
That's
well,
right.
We didn't have a television.
Yeah.
Thank God for that. Thank
Yeah.
you. So what do you do when you're in a tent and you're on the land? And actually all we had was our mobile phones, which isn't great signal out here, but we started learning. We started reading a lot, and coming across different people, obviously, on YouTube and things like that. And that's where it started. So we started to educate ourselves.
And while you're educating yourself, the council has helicopters flying around the property.
Yeah, on no less than 3 occasions with cameras mounted underneath. They were quite low, and they do it every 6 months. I think they fly around the whole area and
And they check everything.
check everything out.
But
Yeah,
no, they fly, but they circle the ones that they are obviously targeting,
Yeah.
because they didn't fly over the neighbours. They flew here.
they've got
and-
their targets.
Yeah.
yeah.
So.
Because that's a lot of money.
No, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of money in that.
Yeah,
Who's
this
paying
is
for
where
that?
this is where our rates money goes. You know, to
Yeah.
pay for helicopters to surveil people.
So that you can't live in a tent.
Yeah.
So that they can fine you for, not for living in a tent. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the point. It eventually ends up with you're both being arrested.
It does. Long story that got to that, but essentially that came from us having our knowledge on law and challenging through an honourable means their due process of their legal system, and asking questions of the council, asking questions and eventually of the courts, and trying to hold them to a substantive law process. And
What does that mean?
all that means real law. So not many people know that there's a difference between legal and lawful. Legal is actually termed as the form of law. So they take the form of law and the general principles of what it means to enact laws, and they apply it. Lawful, however, takes in ethics, morals and substance. So we're talking more along the lines of the common law type of thing, where you are judged by a trial by jury of your peers. That's proper law. The law system we're engaged in at the moment is colour of law. It's legal processes, administrative processes, and all designed around commerce. So we learnt these things. So we were able to challenge the solicitor that held our $300 deposit against a real estate contract, a viable real estate contract, and with a finance clause, which should have been returned when the contract was cancelled, and he then tried to take us into court for, I think it was about $489,000, claiming damages against his client. And of course, when you're living in a tent, you really don't have the opportunity to engage a barrister now, do you? So we had to learn it ourselves. And we certainly learnt that the processes they were taking were not substantive law by any means. And they used some pretty ordinary methods. Yeah.
The first thing we learnt was to keep ourselves out of the court from that solicitor, taking any more money, because we knew it was unjust and it was lies, and just because he had managed to get in first with a rescission notice was not evidence as to why the contract had come to an end. And we knew we had the truth, and there was no reason for us to need to go to court. All he needed to do was follow the due process of what the contract actually stood for. And why we needed to argue that out in court and waste court's time when you're supposed to settle these things on the way to court. So that's why we started to learn. Anyway, we managed to stay out of that court. We never heard from him again, but he's heard from us a few times now.
So have you got that money back?
Still not to this day. It's been 5 years. Still fighting it. Fighting it in a sense, don't like that word, but I mean, we've issued him with affidavits, which are quite powerful instruments when done in the right form. And still no success as yet, but we're still persisting. We haven't given up on that one yet.
We're sticking with the maxim of law that he who leaves the battlefield first loses. So whatever ridiculous arrows we had at the time to send him, because we were still learning, we sent them, because we just thought if we stay at least on the battlefield and we haven't disappeared, he doesn't win. So that's kind of been our thought process, to keep it within, that it hasn't just disappeared, whilst we still educate ourselves on how to get it back. But how do you get somebody to actually push the button?
Surely the contract, it's all in the contract. Surely it's just simple contract law, isn't
I
it?
think so, yeah. But see, we would have to initiate a legal proceeding as a plaintiff and then go probably into the Supreme Court to challenge that. That sometimes takes money. But of course, when you realise how the courts operate, which is a lot about what we've learned, I won't say too much on this, but they are essentially, the lawyers work for the courts. So whilst people have lawyers represent them, they don't really, their first duty is to the court. They work for the court. So it's their job.
And is that to keep the court running, and so it doesn't...
Well, it's all operating under commerce. It's international commerce, and it's basically a monetary system. The court is a bank, basically. So, we learn a lot of these things, and then you start to see it in a little bit of a different light, why they act the way they do and why certain things go certain ways.
But when you say you learnt it, where are these learned from law books, or are they learned from
books,
other people who are thinking differently? From
books and from people that generally have good knowledge on this sort of stuff. There's a lady in the US that's been doing a lot of teachings for the last 40 years on this kind of stuff. And a lot of it stems from establishing your standing, because this is something most of us need to learn. Who actually are we? Who are we? And we all have a right to self-determination. God created man, man creates laws. We're all equal under God, So we all have a right to determine our political status, our standing, our self-determination. They call it political status, but it's not really pertaining to politics as most people know it as such. It's an international terminology. So we learnt these processes, and that's one thing we also did. We spent a fair bit of time declaring, recording and publishing our standing as an unincorporated living man on Victoria. There's a lot of difference between an unincorporated man and an incorporated man, or a man acting in an incorporated capacity. And that's what we're dealing here with. We're dealing with people running these colour of law systems that are acting in an incorporated capacity. incorporated entities shouldn't be able to contract with unincorporated entities. That's an international rule of law. So yeah, so
Yeah, and they're running under presumption. Of course, they're using
all presumption.
presumption. So presumption, I'll give you an example, Michael, and you might want to get onto this now, but is that the presumption, which all started with a letter that was attached to my front gate, that was actually the first one was an envelope, just a small envelope with it written in all capital letters for my name to call a certain number for an emergency, because it was an emergency, and there was a phone number on there. Thought, that's odd. Why would somebody put an envelope on my front gate? Anyway, I said, you call him from someone else's phone and let's see what the emergency is. Well, it's funny, isn't it, how an emergency, he can't talk to that man about the emergency because he's not me. So that happened again, this time a different envelope with a name written in all capital letters, stuck to the front of the gate, private and confidential. Of course, it wasn't really my name. I won't go into the details of that, but it wasn't really my name. So it stayed there. Well, obviously, whoever had placed the envelope there got very mad because they came back probably 2 weeks later and screwed the whole thing up and then put the note on the ground. Clearly, I was meant to, or somebody was meant to read that note. Anyway, long story short, that man disappeared.
he was a process server,
yeah.
by the way. So that's their process to gain jurisdiction on you, over you.
Oh, they were trying to serve you.
They were trying to serve us, yeah. So their process to do that is by consent and acknowledgement, and this is the thing this is the system we've got. We're governed by consent. Everything is by consent and acknowledgement and under presumption. They presume you owe something, you have to do something, and then they now have to get your consent to admit that you are attached to that thing they're presuming, and that's the process.
So that one didn't work because serving, like leaving something on your gate, is that really serving? What is that? I didn't even get a chance to. So that one, he went away. But anyway, so we didn't even know what it was about. Okay, at this stage we had no idea. And then clearly somebody decided that we were a little bit too clever for our boots. So this time they laminated the letter, so it didn't have to be opened. And they laminated it and they applied it to the gate with a cable tie. And it was a lawyer's letter, name made out to a name that looks similar to mine. Anyway, so that was applied to the gate with an envelope stuck to it. Again, made out to, I believe it was an all capitals name, not sure. So that was when I decided, okay, and it did have a court date written on it. So I decided to do the honourable thing and not just ignore it, and to actually actively write to this, that they perhaps presumed that was me. And this is where it all sort of then started. Clearly there was, and there was a court date written on this notice. So I also contacted the court to let them know there'd been a mistake, and that there was basically a presumption, and that I had declared, recorded and published myself as one of the living people on, and that I didn't have any business basically with, which ended up being the council. So that was the process I took. I did it honourably. I sent both the council. I even went into the council, gave them my documents to say that I'm rebutting the presumption. You see, they have this presumption that I'm doing business with them, so I'm rebutting the presumption by showing them my paperwork. I received nothing else back. And also, I'd like to point out that I had previously written to the council, I think you might have mentioned that asking them questions about their authority. And all we'd received from them is a notice stuck to the gate again. Everything was just pinned on the gate with a cable tie. And the first one was about the 16th of August, that by the 16th of August we needed to have told them why we had why we were, what was the wording you used?
They needed us to explain why they shouldn't prohibit us from entering our shed.
So by now you'd built a shed.
So
Yeah,
at this
so-
point, we've missed that bit.
Yeah.
So we'd spent 11 months in the tent. We finally got ourselves scratched together a little bit of money came from our last payment from our company, actually, and we were able to buy a second-hand shed. We went and dismantled it from close by, brought it up here and put it up. I wanted to get my family out of the tent, you know.
He didn't want us to be in the another winter.
No, it's hardly luxury accommodation, as you can imagine. But it was somewhat more protected than spending cold, windy nights trying to hold the canvas on the roof, you know, inhaling rain, you know. That's while there's holes in the side of your tent because your clothes are poking out and that sort of thing, you know. So I had to get the family out of the tent. We had to do it. It was just a pretty uncomfortable 11 months, you know.
Yeah.
So going to bed fully clothed.
Yeah, fully clothed. Yeah.
Now the shed also didn't have a permit, I take it?
Correct.
Did
yeah.
you think of getting a permit just to get the council off your back from the start?
We didn't really have the money to do it, and
And we were hearing reports actually from locals that people were getting permits for certain sheds, you know, probably maybe bigger than ours, and it was costing them something like $30,000 to get the permit through.
and an 18-month wait.
So really, we didn't have that money. We certainly didn't have the time to go ahead and ask for a permit. So, you know, survival mode again. Survival mode. Do we sit here? You know, we need a few more creature comforts, a little bit, you know, of somewhere to put our stuff we right now actually this shelter that we're sitting in, this was the only thing we had built first. Where we had stored our belongings, you know, and so we needed something else. Plus, I had my daughter living with us as well, so you know, and the poor thing, she was on the floor on a mattress, and the tent had lost its structure. You know, it was starting, the Velcro walls that were holding it together, they weren't holding anymore. They're not designed to live in. You know, it wasn't designed to live in. So we needed to do something else. So hence, no, we did not do the permit thing. However, the first interaction with the council wasn't exactly a welcome to the, you know, to the area either. So, but I'd question them about their authority, and all I got then was, and that was after somebody had dobbed us in, mind you. Well, someone must have dobbed us in for living in a tent. I mean, how would they know? Like, you know, I mean, why would they know we were living in the tent to begin with? It could have just been camping, you know. People used to do that. They used to come up to this area and camp on weekends, bring their children and, you know, and spend the weekend, you know, on farmland and feed the chickens and feed the horses. People don't do that anymore. So, anyway, where was I going?
So the tent, let's move to, you built the shed, and is this what led to the arrest?
Not for myself. Mine was a couple of minor traffic offences. So Sarah's story was more about the shed because her name was on the title. My name wasn't on the title.
The title of the shed or the property?
Title of the property.
The land.
So mine wasn't about that. Mine was about a couple of traffic offences which I'd challenged with a similar process. So back to substantive law again. I'd done it in an honourable way, and I'd challenged and eventually got to a summons. I challenged the summons through the court process, which we have every right to do. We have every right to ask questions, and that's what I did. And the arrest on the day, what led to that arrest was, for me, was a traffic offence. Okay, Sarah, however, was arrested on the same day, with no knowledge of what that was. Her arrest was even for.
First off, before we get to the arrest, were you born in Australia? Are you Australian born?
No,
Where are you from originally?
England.
England. When did you come here?
I think it was like 1981.
Okay.
Yeah, quite a
Yeah.
while ago. That's
Yeah.
why I don't have an English accent.
Yeah.
I'm more Australian than I am English. In fact, I didn't live in England. I think I was within the first 6 months, moved, and was raised in Germany as my younger life.
Okay.
Yeah, and then here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
so
So you get all the way from England and Germany, and then you're here on this property, and then suddenly the police are turning up. And this is all really starts with a tent and a shed. But
here I am sitting here in front of this camera as a criminal. I mean, in accordance with them anyway. So you know, never having a speeding fine, parking ticket, nothing. Never have done anything untoward in all of my life. So, and even leading up to the arrest, keeping it all honourable and sending letters and questioning, which is, you know, one of the things I've certainly realised. I am a questioner, I'm a critical thinker, and and when things don't start sort of making sense, you ask more questions. Clearly they don't like that. So what was the question you wanted?
so let's get to the arrest. So that they turned up, they arrest Steve for a vehicle offence or something.
Yeah, his was just minor traffic offence.
Traffic.
Yeah. But you see,
And then they arrested you as well.
well, on the same morning. Now, this only just happened on the 2nd of September, so it's
So
very...
you're both arrested together, but different charges, but they don't tell you what the charges are.
No, so they circle our house, people in costume to circle our house, and start demanding that we come outside. All I could hear was, because we do have double glazed windows, so it's, you know, keep us nice and warm. I did hear my first name, Sarah, did get mentioned, something about paperwork, and I just politely said thank you, but no thank you. Like, it was quite intimidating, you know, to have three people hiding behind the tree over there, and numerous vehicles at the front gate, and them all walking up the driveway, which is 250 metres long. So we had a time to sort of realise what was happening, and then we were surrounded. It wasn't long before they broke down the back door and came in and pushed Steve onto the ground, and forcibly, with a with a weapon drawn, a taser, and knee into the back, and smashed his head onto the ground and handcuffed him. Whilst they didn't do that to me, it was interesting. Like, I was just standing, and they arrested me. They said that I was under arrest. And when I asked what for, well, you know, was there, like, why am I under arrest? It was like weird, like, why? How can two of us, like, you know, I knew we had been questioning for different things, but it was very much a combined, organised event. And within 5 minutes of them standing outside, it was not, you know, let's ask a lot of questions, let's, you know, try and get to the bottom of this, try and coax them out nicely. Oh no, that was because of the time frame of them turning up and then coming in the back door. So I had bare feet at the time, and they'd broken the glass on the back door to get in. So they offered me some shoes and then promptly took me out the front door and handcuffed me. That's where they did the handcuffing, outside. So again, I asked, where's the warrant? What's this about? And all I got was a very vague something about maybe it's council, maybe it's sheriff. That's it. So I reserved my rights. I said I do not consent to being put at rest. I invoke the law of kinds. I am an unincorporated woman living on the land and soil of Australia, Victoria, sorry. And I rebutted all presumptions because I knew it was presumptions, because not at one stage did they use anything other than Sarah. It was bizarre. I was like, well, this isn't kind of like how, I'd sort of expected it to go. Well, first of all, I didn't expect them to break in. So then they took Steve. He was ahead of me. The arresting man, armed assailant, I would like to call him, took him ahead of me, whilst I was being escorted across the paddock by two police officers. One to my right was a woman, and the other one I'd never seen him before. But so anyway, all I could say was I don't consent to this. They took me to my front gate. They expected me to, of course, have to climb over that because it was a locked front gate with a no trespass sign and an international law peace sign, which we have on our front gate. So I said, I don't consent to climbing my gate. How do I do that? I've got my arms behind my back with handcuffs on. So they helped me to scramble over the poster rail fencing. They then took me to the back of a divvy van. I noticed Steve was already in there on his back with his arms behind his back, handcuffed. And I said, I don't consent to going into this vehicle. And then I was promptly pushed in. Luckily, I managed to get in and sit. So I wasn't like Steve. I was actually sitting in there with my hands behind my back with handcuffs. So then the door got closed and we got taken to an undisclosed area. Nobody told me anything. I had no idea where they were taking us. From my good sense of direction, I had a fair idea of. I was kind of surprised. I sort of went, right, well, it's not where I thought they'd take us. And then we ended up in an undisclosed, what looked like a brick enclosed car park would be how I'd say, like a garage, I suppose. Steve was taken out and I was left in there. 3.5 hours I was left in the back of a divvy van with my hands behind my back. And every now and again somebody would come and open the back of the divvy van and then they'd come and lock it again. So what do you do when you're in a divvy van for 3.5 hours? Well, I did have one stage have a lovely young constable, I guess he was, who stood and offered me some food. The only thing I took was water. And he did try, it was his job obviously to coax me out. However, I said thank you, but I didn't consent to being arrested. I didn't consent to being put into here. I don't consent to coming out. So clearly they left me in there. So as time sort of went on, he would leave me. He'd go off and do something else, and I noticed that there were some other people. I guess they were in some sort of a blue uniform. So in an undisclosed area, I was obviously being monitored. So I decided to sing because that's what I decided that, it was quite painful. The shoulders were giving me grief, but I mean, what could I do, right? I can't take them off. So the first song I sang was Amazing Grace. And I have to say the acoustics, the acoustics in the back of the divvy van, fantastic, I mean, normally I would cup my hand or I'd have some sort of a fold back. It was a fold back. And the brick walls that were beyond the back of the divvy van was also a wonderful, it just echoed. And that song just, it filled. And it clearly had an impact even on the people standing around. It must have resonated, I could see. Nobody told me to stop singing. So I would just have a break. There would, every now and again, somebody would bring me some water and have a couple of sips, because the last thing you want to do is go to the toilet in there, right? So I then started to sing again, and this time I sang Eva Cassidy's "People Get Ready." That was another good song, and then I sang a couple of more songs that we'd written. And interestingly enough, to watch the body language of especially the woman that was standing there, and silently I asked her questions in between my songs, and I spoke to her silently, telling her what a beautiful woman she was, that she was really in a bad job, and did she actually really think I was a criminal and the way I was being treated? So after 3.5 hours and one lot of a group of 5 people came out and tried to also convince me to come and sign some paperwork. And again, I said, well, I didn't consent to being here. I have no idea why I'm here. Nobody seems to be able to give me any information. I don't consent to coming out, and I certainly don't consent to signing any undisclosed contract. They huffed and went away. I then did ask for a more senior man came out and gruffed and looked into the back of the vehicle and said, "What?" And I said, "I don't consent to being here. I'm just wondering, when are you taking me home?" And he said, "You're not going home. You're going to be shipped off to Shepparton. You're waiting a hearing." And I said, "What is that for?" He just huffed and left me alone. So again, I had no idea why I'd been arrested. I didn't know where Steve was, and I was still in the back of the divvy van with my arms behind my back. So and I know it was 3.5 hours, because I'd asked the time of the women that came. There were 3 women who came and said, "You're going to have to get out." I said, "I don't consent to being here, and I don't consent to getting out." They said, "It's OH&S risk for you to be in here." And I laughed and I said, "Oh, so after 3.5 hours, now it's an OH&S risk. Fascinating. I mean, in the back of a divvy van, no seatbelts, been thrown around at what seemed like excessive speeds when you're in the back of something like that, if nobody's ever experienced it like I hadn't. And now it's an OH&S risk. Fascinating." And again, I said, "I don't consent to being here. I don't consent to getting out." So they forcibly removed me. So now I'm out of the divvy van. They've taken me through a door and put me into what I guess would be called a holding cell, which is a fairly large room with at least 4 different cells leading off it. So it's like the common, I guess you'd say. And they left me there. They took my shoes off me, because I remember sitting on the cold steel seat with the table, with very cold feet. So some hours later, a woman, maybe 2, came, because I had my hood over my head and I was just very quietly sitting there. They appeared, came and asked me some questions, and all I said was, "What's that?" And they said, "This is, we need to know about your health." And again, I thought, really? You care about my health after what you've just done to me, and you still don't tell me why I'm here? So I didn't answer any questions. And they just made up whatever they needed to put on their sheet. Maybe about an hour or 2 later, it was really starting to get late in the day, because I could see daylight, and I knew, because I'm an outside kind of a woman with the horses, I could see it was starting to get quite late. I then had a visit from 3 women who came into the holding cell and told me that they needed to strip search me. And they took me into the shower, which was just in the corner of the holding cell. And I said, I don't consent to being here. I don't consent to being strip searched. I give no consent. And I looked at each one of them in the eye and I said, I don't consent. I don't consent. I don't consent. And then I asked them where their body cameras were. I said, oh, so you don't have body cameras? No, of course not, they said. We don't do that. And I looked around the room and I said, oh, so no cameras either? No, of course not. And I said, well, I don't consent. I don't consent to this. And they then took my arms, threw them up in the air and ripped off my clothing. First starting with the top half. And as they did that, there was a taller woman behind me who had noticed me pushing my underwire bra, the wire, bloody things, every now and again it just pops up. And I was pushing it back down because it's uncomfortable. And she said, she's got a wire. Like I've got some weapon. It's a wire. We're going to have to take that off. So they did. They removed, which they were doing anyway, but they didn't give it back to me. So in other words, they stripped me down to nothing and took my bra away and didn't give it back because it had a protruding wire, right?
What was it like standing there naked with these 3 cops around you that just stripped you naked?
Well, I
And
couldn't.
still not knowing why you were charged.
I know. Honestly, I couldn't look at them. I'd already done that. I looked at them and it was like, I think you go into a bit of a self-preservation mode, where I couldn't almost see them. I knew they were there. I knew what they were doing, but you remove yourself spiritually, I suppose, if you like, from that, what they're doing. And then they forcibly turned me around. They did the top half and then gave me back my T-shirt to put back on, obviously no bra, and then gave me my jumper to put back on and then asked me to do the bottom half. So, but again, I didn't do it. I put my clothes back on, of course, but there was no way I was doing that. No, I don't even know why I'm there. How ridiculous is this? I'm being held captive by armed assailants. I'm just going to say it how I saw it. I didn't even know where I was. It's only because I'm pretty cluey that I kind of figured out where I was. And they're taking my clothes off? Why? What for? It gets better than that too. I mean, then I'm told that because of that particular location not having been a manned area overnight, I'm being taken elsewhere. I still don't know why I'm there. What is the purpose? Who's arrested me? Like, who's ordered that? And who started this? Do you know what I mean? So very strange, really strange. And the whole time I was kind of expecting that there'd be some sort of, I don't know, an interview. So as the day got, starting to draw to a close, I was just like, okay, it's not kind of how I thought it would be. I mean, surely somebody would ask me who I am. Do you know what I mean? Because, it was just all presumption that I was the one they needed. But for who? Who were they working for? Like, just bizarre. It was just a real surreal thing. But, you can tell by my story that I was at no point, and I'm telling you now, I was at no point belligerent. I never said anything bad. I had a great conversation with the young gentleman and he really was a gentleman. He was a gentle soul who spoke to me at the beginning, and it clearly was his job to be nice to me, and he did a great job, and I enjoyed that.
So let's get to so they put you on a bus to move you?
So as soon as they'd finished their strip search of me, assault, they gave me my shoes back. I got to put them back on. They took me out, and it was just directly out and to the left and back into the garage place where I had been. Now there was an armoured vehicle. That would be how I would describe it. You know, if I called it a bus, you would think, oh yeah, a bus. No. This is an armoured transport vehicle. Now I met with two men who now you got to understand, I've just been strip searched, right? I've literally walked out 2 doors to get out to this garage, and there's 2 men, and now he's got one of those,
Oh, to scan you.
yeah, the scanner, the mobile scanner. And I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding. Like, what? They couldn't find anything on my actual, physical body. Now they have to do that. But you see, what's happened is that they've now taken control of me, of the body, I should say. So now it's up to them to ensure that that under their procedures, they have to scan me for any weapons. They then tell me that I asked if Steve was coming, and they said yes, he'd be going on there too. And I did ask, now why am I being moved? And they said because they don't hold prisoners here overnight. Okay, great. So I'm now a prisoner, all right? And where am I going? You're going to the Melbourne, I call it the Melbourne Remand Centre, but I think it's called MCC, Melbourne.
Yeah, that's about a 3-hour drive.
Well, that's in the city.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Now, you've got to remember, I don't know this. I find this out once I'm there, right?
Yeah.
And so I still don't know. I still don't know. So here I am being, checked over again, put onto this armoured vehicle and taken for a drive. And I'm sitting by myself. I could hear there's walls inside this thing, and they're all, high tensile steel, and all riveted, so you can't undo anything, kind of thing. A really thick door, and I could hear voices in the back. So there was clearly 2 people, having a chat as they're driving along, and I'm thinking, oh well, there's no Steve. But when I got put onto the bus, again I sang to calm myself down, and again I sang Amazing Grace. And I thought maybe he might have heard me if he'd been on the bus, but I didn't hear anything. So anyway, we're taken down, and it was night time. I could see out the window. I didn't recognise exactly the roads, but you could kind of gather it was a freeway because there were traffic either side of you. Whether or not it was, but I just knew that we were heading to the city. I didn't know where we were going. You could gather from the road. And it was noisy, very noisy in the back of that. Anyway, so we get taken to this one place. The people obviously in the back, and it was like a high prison walls where we were. We got driven into this driveway where you could see the sheets of the walls and the barbed wire, So I knew it was a prison. They got off, but before they got off, they were sort of saying, oh, is there anybody on the bus? Is there anybody still on the bus? And I didn't say anything at that point because I really wasn't in the mood of talking. And then I heard one of them say, well, there must be, because somebody was singing. And I thought, oh, they heard me. Okay. So they got off the bus, and then we were just starting to drive off again, and I started to sing Amazing Grace again, because I thought to myself, well, if they heard me, and if Steve's on this same van, whatever you want to call it, he will hear me. And then all of a sudden, I'd finished and I just did the first verse. I heard someone else singing back to me, and he was singing I Wish You Were Here, Pink Floyd. So I started singing along with him. Then, which was very comforting. It's just very comforting to know that that your voice has been heard again, you know. So I get the bus, the prisoner van, what do you want to call it, armoured vehicle, I think is just probably the best way to describe it, pulls into this, again, another enclosed garage. The roller doors go down. I wait for a bit, and the two guys that had driven the bus escort me down, and they were very nice, I have to say. They treated me with respect, and they said, "Don't worry, you'll be looked after here." So now they've handed me over to some more people. I go into there, and and this is what the Melbourne MCC, I can't think of what it's, something command centre, maybe Melbourne Command Centre, I can't remember. I then get told to stand on an X where somebody has clearly got some sort of a camera, and again I say I don't consent to being here, because now it's another place, another venue, just in case, you know, maybe they might ask me, I don't know, who I am, you know. They might ask me some questions. I think they do ask me a couple of questions. I don't know, but I just kept saying I don't consent to being here. It was just, you know, falling on deaf ears. I'm then taken by two women into a very close by room. In the corner is a red piece of tape, you know, like just red tape on the corner. It's like it defines the corner of the room, and you're told to stand there, and they strip search me again.
Again?
Yeah, again. So that's within...
And how were they? Were they the same, rough?
Well, I used to watch Prisoner. That's what that was like. They were... one had these weird perspex glasses on, as though she was expecting me to spit at her, I guess, maybe. The other one didn't. And when I didn't do it quick enough for them, like, you know, they were demanding for me to take my shoes off, and of course I was saying I don't consent to this again, then they got rough, and it was, you're nothing but a effing peasant. And, you know, and they got quite aggressive, to the point where I thought, and of course, you know, I held my own. I was still holding my own. I was still going, no, because at the end of the day, I was still going, I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm here, why I'm being treated like a criminal, when nobody can tell me why I'm even here. So sorry, you want me to strip naked for you? Like, you know, I'm a reasonable woman. So they forcibly made me, yes, and bend over and part my butt cheeks for them. And if I didn't do that, then I don't know what they would have done, but that's what they made me do. So after having done that, they gave me back my clothes. They kept my shoes. They kept my jumper. I still didn't have my bra, so that I didn't even know where that was. Actually, I did ask them, where's my bra? Because I thought, was it still at the other undisclosed location? But no, they assured me it was there, that it had been brought on the prisoner bus thing. So they didn't, they kept my jumper. So now I was in a leggings, black leggings, no socks, because I didn't find any socks that morning. I had no shoes, and I had my undies and I had my t-shirt. And they escorted me then in handcuffs again to a cell, which was just down the corridor, not very far, and popped me in there. And that must have been around about, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night. It was quite a long day. And this had happened at 10 o'clock that morning. So now it's 12 hours, and I still don't know why I'm there. I still have no idea, and I have no idea what's happening. All I knew from that one senior man was they were obviously trying to organise some sort of a hearing.
So gets to the hearing in the morning. So hopefully here's where you're going to find out why you're here.
Well, no, actually, I don't know until 2 o'clock that afternoon.
Oh.
Yeah, 2 o'clock in the afternoon when somebody puts their head through the little. The only way, you've probably seen it in the movies where they drop the, the locked up thing, and I see a woman, Miss, your hearing's at 2:30, and I said to her, well, what time is it now? And she said I think she must have said it was 2 o'clock. So I knew I had about half an hour. Mind you, what do you do when you're in a cell by yourself? And no, not that I don't rely on my phone, thank goodness, I don't have that addiction. But I did have to rely on myself and my knowledge of the things I'd learnt. So, and of course, what do they have in that cell? A television. Oh my. That's like the worst thing you could put when somebody hasn't been watching television and you're forced to watch Channel 10 cooking shows and 4-letter game shows. Oh, how brainwashing is that? It's just so... Anyway, so I had used and the blanket that is on the bed, it's a horse rug. Like, that's the first thing I noticed. I went, oh my God, this is like... It's a what do we call it in the horse world? It's a ripstop canvas, a light canvas, white flag. It's like a flag material. That's what we call it in the horse world anyway. It's like a ripstop canvas sewn together, 2 lots of it. Not very warm, right? And don't forget, I'm only in a t-shirt. And it's as dry as anything in there. But anyway, so I have, I've had the cover over it because I can't stand the lights either, the LED lights that they have shining on you. And the television, you can't even turn it off. Anyway, so they'd offered me some food. I certainly didn't want to eat. I did not want to eat their food. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not taking any benefits. I will take water. And that's all I'm allowing myself. Plus, I was sick, feeling sick. Like, here I am. I still don't know why I'm here. It's now the next day. How long are they going to keep me? And they're the thoughts that go through your head. How long can they keep me? Who even knows I'm here?
Yeah, wow.
Who
And
knows
what
I'm
about
here?
calling a lawyer or anything?
Oh, no, there was none of that.
Yeah.
No. There was not, did you want to call someone to let someone know you're here? And what about my animals? And what about the fact that they'd broken in and do they go back and shut the door? Do they make it secure? Do they make sure that all my belongings are okay? And to let my daughter know where I am? Like, she would have come home from work that night and wondered, what the hell's happened?
Yeah.
Like the back door, the glass all over the floor. She was in complete panic mode. Thankfully, before they had broken in, we made some phone calls and we actually had some people here who didn't witness the break-in, and I think that's why they did it so quickly, but they witnessed what was happening, and thankfully they were able to somehow get in contact with her to reassure her that, or at least tell her what had happened. So 2:30 in the afternoon, around about that time, I don't know, because there's no clocks or anything, I'm now escorted by 2 other prison officers. Now, you got to remember, this is a private corporation, just so that everybody realises. And I can tell you right now, it's quite interesting to observe.
You're talking about the prison as a private.
In the prison. I'm talking about the amount of people that are working in that prison, that one alone. Like, they were non-stop. They were backwards and forwards, going, taking people. It was, just constant. And quite a lot of men, but I had the women come and take me. So now I get escorted upstairs to this supposed hearing and taken into a room where, and I have the handcuffs taken off so that I can at least sit at the table. And there's a screen in front of me.
You weren't handcuffed in the cell, though, were you?
No, you're not. You're only handcuffed when you're being moved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, thankfully. Oh, I don't think I could do that. So you're then put in a room where these two prison warden women stay with you, and I'm waiting, and I can see that somebody else is having some sort of a hearing. They're still finishing off on the last one. But I can recognise two names now on the screen. Now, remember, it's now 2:30 in the afternoon the next day. I was taken, it started at 10 o'clock the previous day. Now all of a sudden I know. But I've had to make that. I'm smart enough to figure out, it's council. Right.
This is all for not having a permit.
Well, this is all for not having a permit. But here's the thing, Michael, right? I contacted when there was, this notice attached to the gate that had a court date. So I didn't just ignore it. I wrote to the council. I wrote to the lawyer, explaining that I had corrected my political status and there had been a mistake. Now there was a mistake. I won't go into that, but and I had contacted the court. Now this is 3 months. 3 months later. Like I had seen nothing else about it. So 3 months later, all of a sudden, there's a combined arrest of both myself and Steve, and he was minor traffic offences. So,
What happened in the hearing?
so the hearing, basically, it was actually, the hearing was to get me to sign what they call an undertaking of bail, which I presume was what they wanted me to sign and come out and sign when they asked me to come out and sign some paperwork when they first were saying my name. But it's interesting, Michael, that paperwork never came when they took me outside my house. So, it didn't appear. It wasn't anywhere. And even when I asked for a warrant, nothing, no paperwork. And then even when I was being held in the divvy van, remember that there was 5 people that came, and they did say to me something about if you just come inside and sign some paperwork. And of course I said I don't consent. So they left me alone. So clearly I'm now being forced to consent. This is the only way I can put it. I'm now being forced to consent.
Broken.
They're trying to break me. Yeah. So I ask, why was I arrested? I asked the magistrate, could you please explain to me why I was put at rest and what this is all about? Because I don't know. I don't know why I'm here. Nobody seems to be able to tell me. Perhaps you could tell me. And crickets. Nothing. Can't tell me. What? So you've got a hearing. You've got me on television. And you even can't tell me. So what's going on here? Clearly there isn't anything. It's just made up. It's just SMU. Shit made up. But they force you in there. Anyway, so backwards and forwards, I ask again. I keep asking. I stated I reserved my rights again before it started, and I said exactly what I had said when I was here, that I'm an unincorporated living woman on the land and soil jurisdiction, and I invoked the law of kind. So he basically said, well, you need to sign this undertaking of bail. You'll be held here until the 11th of September. So that's 8 days. So it's like, right. So I say to him, so can I just get this straight? You're saying that unless I sign an undisclosed contract, which you are calling an undertaking of bail, you're going to remand me in custody, and I still don't even know why I'm here. Unless I sign that, you're not going to release me. That's what I got. And then because I asked again, so what, could you please, you still haven't told me, why am I here? What's the reason you're holding me here? What have I been brought here for? Surely you must know something. He then did clue me in that he had my paperwork, because he referred to habeas corpus. And he goes, you know, you've got some things on your documents, you're claiming the whole habeas corpus, act. And he goes, it's all just a load of, gobbledygook. And I thought, oh, okay, he's got my documentation. Right. So now I said, well, I can't quite remember, but I did, again, I asked him, so what is this about? Maybe, and then I looked at the lawyer who had his face on there, and the council representative was just a name, but obviously it was the name I'd written to, so I knew it was him. And I said, perhaps you could tell me, and I mentioned his name, and I said, perhaps you could tell me why I'm here. Is there a warrant? I haven't seen a warrant. Is there charges? What's this about? Crickets, absolute crickets, just look away. And then the magistrate says, well, it's a criminal matter. Well, I just about laughed. Because, see, the whole thing I had been asking the council was a civil matter, because a civil matter means there must be a contract. And now all of a sudden they're telling me it's a criminal matter. And I laughed. And I said, I'm sorry, sorry, what? Did you just say it's a criminal matter? I go, how can it be a criminal matter? Who have I harmed? Bring forward the man or the woman that I've harmed. So bring forward the who have I damaged to be a criminal matter? How can this be a crime? So then I asked the solicitor on the screen, have I harmed you? Then I asked the gentleman whose name it was, have I harmed you? How can I harm a corporation? It's not possible. Anyway, again, crickets. And clearly I was taking too long, because the magistrate then said, well, if you don't sign this undertaking of bail, you're going to be held remanded in custody. So what are you going to do? And I said, well, again, I still don't understand. Like, you're saying it's a criminal matter, but what have I done? What are the charges? Where's the warrant? And then he went tippity tap, 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 tap onto his computer, and he says, well, I tell you what, I'll make it the 8th of October. And I said, so you're now saying, can I just clarify this? So what you're saying is that you're now going to hold me in this remand centre until the 8th of October unless I sign an undertaking, an undisclosed undertaking of bail contract. And he goes, yep. And I said, and then what? Then what would happen? He said, well, then you'd be taken straight to the court. And I said, well, wouldn't you consider that's blackmail? You've just blackmailed me into that. So you're now going to hold me until the 8th of October unless I sign that form. And he goes, and then obviously my time had run out. It was like, well, like one of those programs where, all of a sudden your money's run out, time went out, and the screen went blank. And I thought, oh, okay. So now what? Now where am I? Like, am I now it seems like it's the 8th of October. In hindsight, I probably could have said, I don't accept that, but I didn't say that. Because in my mind, I was already deciding that, well, they force you into this, don't they? They force you into this corner, and they're going to hold me. They don't care. They don't even care who I am in that whole building under this private corporation. They have me in one of their cells, and they do not know who I am. They haven't identified me at all. They've just taken it because somebody else has told them that this is who I am, but even they didn't really identify me in the first place. Anyway, so then the two women officers say to me, so what are you going to do? And I said, well, could you just clarify? So I have to do it or he'll just remand me. I said, well, that's what we heard, but it's none of our business, you know. So they put the handcuffs back on, they take me down to the cell, and they're saying, so you're going to sign it or not? And I said, well, oh no, would you like to sign it? One of the words. I said, I don't consent to that. No, I would not like to sign it. Well, then, of course, they opened the door and they were throwing me in. And I said, but given that I have no options right now, under duress, I will sign it. So they organised it. Some hours later, I got, a couple of hours later, I think, I got taken up by two other women security guards up in this weird lift where they lock you into this. It's like one of those mining lifts, really weird. Anyway, so it's not like a lift you would think, you know. It's like you go into behind a prison, a cage gated, just like you would expect in a mining shaft. That's how it reminded me of. It's all part of the theatre, I suppose. They took me upstairs to a counter where I was then presented with a piece of paper with a name I am familiar with, but in all capital letters. And they asked me to sign it, and on there were two. This was the undertaking of bail. It did say bail something, and on there were two charges kind of thing. It was the first time I'd seen it written.
Wow.
And that was my only ticket out.
And what were the charges?
Failing to get a building permit, and I actually can't remember the other one. It was like a one.
So you've been strip searched twice, held in jail for almost 24 hours.
Well, it was now. It would have been 4:30 by the time they actually let me go.
So all of that for a building permit for a shed
Yeah, building.
on your own property.
And because I questioned their authority as to why, what authority do they have to require a building permit from me? Now, these were unanswered questions, right? There was no coming back to me. It was just we're under the Building Act. But here's the thing, nobody asks the question. Everybody just pays their rates because your dad did it and your granddad did it and everybody in society does it. But why? Has anybody actually asked? Why? Like, why is it, who decides that these rates go up? We just assume that there's, we voted these people in, but nobody really questions the depth of it. And I was, on behalf of everybody. It wasn't really about the building permit. It was about the fact that we have this authoritarian people, demanding money off us. They were demanding money, and they demanded money when I was in a tent. Now they were demanding more money, but also they were threatening to demolish what we'd built and put us homeless again. It wasn't just that they were asking for money. It was the fact that they had first of all given a date in the initial thing of the 16th of August for us to give them a reason why we should not, why they should allow us into our building, and the 13th of September 2024 that we needed to have it demolished by. So it was already decided then, this time last year, that we should demolish the building. And it was all because they said they'd done an inspection, which they never did. So why should I just do as they say when they've not done the right thing themselves and I'm questioning them for it? Clearly this is their way of teaching me a lesson. And I have to just tell you this last bit, Michael, that it didn't just finish there. The humiliation didn't just finish there. I was then asked to verify that that was me on that piece of paper, which is an all capitals name. And when I said no, I said, it kind of looks similar, but it's not me. I should go back upstairs. I had signed what I'd learnt. I don't know if it works, but I had signed V.C. I'd written Sarah, and I'd finished it off next to my name with 1-308, which reserves your rights. Now, according to what I've learnt, is you reserve your rights the moment you're arrested and you've told them, you reserve your rights. So I decided I would do that. I would reserve my rights the whole way through. I just kept saying I do not consent. And I reserve my rights on that piece of paper as well, which is the way we should sign any contract, especially undisclosed contracts. We don't even know what we're signing, right? 1-308, and it's a uniform commercial code, which is in their system. They know what that means. So I'm then given a bag. They asked me my born date because I said that's not me. Then the man changed to, what's your date of birth? And I said, I'm not a vessel, I'm not a ship. I don't have a date of birth. I have a born day. And he was, thinking I was one of those loony people. But at the end of the day, it's what it is, right? And he goes, but that's spelt differently. And I said, well, I have a born day. And he says, what's your born day? And, of course, I gave him the born day, which released me, because he said, I can throw you back in the cell. And I'm like, there's the door, right? Shut up, Sarah. Just do as you're told. They give me a bag containing my shoes, my bra, and my jumper. And two ladies take me to the garage again, where I'd been transported into. And they're going, oh, you okay? I thought, oh, okay, some nice ladies. I'll be nice, nice to have some nice. And I said, I'm looking around, and I said, so where's the toilet where I can get dressed? Because I don't have a bra on. Like, I'd like to put my bra back on. And they said, I'm so sorry. So sorry. They opened the roller door. And I said to them, well, how do I get home? What? Because,
Did you have any money on you?
No money. No, didn't think to pack the Mikey card, did I, I said, how do I get home? Oh, well, because I said, I've got no money, I've got no phone, nothing. I don't even know where I am. And they said, oh, well, if you just go up here, you'll be near Flagstaff Station. If you just turn right down here, you'll find Southern Cross Station. And I said, well, how am I going to get on a train? I'll just show you undertaken or your bail form. And you'll get on. You're free to travel.
Uh-huh.
So note that.
That's nice.
Copy one. Everybody do it. Anyway, so and as they're saying that, they're opening the roller door, and I'm put out onto the pavement, and that right there. So remember, I've got no shoes on, so I'm barefoot. I've got no bra on. I've got no jumper on. They're in a bag. I'm now put out onto the street as a peasant, right? And there's people having their cups of coffee in the morning. Oh, no, it was afternoon, so it was about 4:30. I think it was about 4:30. And they're going, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. Right? So, of course...
How'd you get home? Just got on a train?
Well, thankfully I'm pretty resourceful, right? I opened the bag, I put my shoes on, I put my jumper on, I put my bra into my little, pockets. I put the bag in the bin, I head down to Southern Cross Station, and I find the nearest toilet. I get dressed. I then head to the station, because all this time, Michael, you got to understand, I'm thinking, I've got work tonight. I look after a lady's horses, and I can't not do that. I didn't have to work the night before. Thankfully, that wasn't my day to work. This is the only way I make some money to survive, but also I'm doing her a favour. I'm helping her with her horses so that she can go and take care of somebody who's vaccine injured. So I need to get home somehow from the city, which is where I am, and it was William Street, which is what I found out once I got outside. So I make my way to Southern Cross Station. I look at the timetable, 2 minutes to the next train. I'm like, and I start running. Thankfully, I had a bra on, right? So I'm running around, and then I'm thinking, how am I going to get through the turnstiles? I've got 2 minutes, and that's going to go pretty quick. I get to the turnstiles where they, you got to show your Mikey card. There's a woman there. She's already talking to the guy, trying to get through herself. I'm like, I don't have time for this. And then honestly, it's like divine intervention. Another worker comes just out of nowhere. The gate's open and I just run through, get to the train, jump on the train, the door's shut, and I'm heading home.
So we're all of the vintage where we're born into the she'll be right era. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. We actually lived what we thought was a pretty cruisy, happy life, didn't we?
Yeah.
We've had a good life. Well, I before I met you, it was certainly a great life. I know.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, can we cut that?
No, that's great. But that's what it is. So now, and like you said, you've never been in trouble with the law. I'd never had any trouble with the law.
Squeaky clean.
And then suddenly we're in this thing where we're getting shot by rubber bullets. We're locked in our houses. Everything's going crazy. So you would expect that there was a motivation for some people to go, what are our laws? And so wouldn't you think this is maybe why so many people are studying the law like yourself?
Well, definitely, it's a case of it wasn't getting solved by any external means. So, what is really going on here? Let's have a look at why. Why are these processes becoming so oppressive like this? So for us, that's what we did. We started looking at it and trying to figure out why we're being governed this way, if you like, and realising that whilst we had all those days that were she'll be right, hey, we've probably neglected our duty to take some responsibility for our own situation.
Yeah. So it's like it's our fault in a way. Now we're paying the price.
It is.
But here you are. You've got a family living in a tent. It's freezing cold. You want to house them. It's going to take you 18 months and money to get the permit. And so the state's basically going, because you have to either freeze to death or leave your property and be homeless.
Yeah, well, where's the remedy? Where's the resolve for that? That decision that they decide to make. You know? So survival mode is, and I'm sure anyone would think like this. I need to protect my family.
Yeah.
I need to make sure they're not going to get sick from being exposed to extreme conditions. And those 10 months in that tent were pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And we just thought, yeah, look, we're past the camping novelty now. Asked me to go camping now, and I wouldn't be too keen.
But just going back another thing though, like a criminal is supposed to be someone gets hurt or society gets hurt. How could society get hurt by you guys going homeless?
Yeah.
Just to adhere to these bylaws, whatever they are. You guys, the only people who will get hurt is you guys, homeless and freezing, while you own all this land that you can't do anything upon, because even though you've bought it with your money, the council's basically come and go, no, it's not yours.
No, it's not ours. But the other thing too is that, we've been giving. We always give. Like, we don't have money to give, but we give our time. And in actual fact, the reason we have horses and we haven't gotten rid of the horses is that they're here for a purpose. We're actually wanted to, even in the last place we were at, develop a meditation with horses to help people, because we saw the suffering that was starting, and I knew, especially during the COVID, there was going to be a lot of people who were going to suffer mentally, and they would need some sort of assistance. So the horses actually, are our tool for helping people. So this is why we ended up on 50 acres. Sure, we could have, gotten rid of all the animals, but the whole thing is that we're giving people, and yet we found that everybody just kept taking. Like, we lost our business. I lost my job. We lost where we were living. We lost, a roof over our head. And yet the council come onto the land and just want to take money. They didn't even offer a survival package or any, I don't know, dried food or assistance. It was just take, and then the solicitor not returning our money. It's just like, come on, what is wrong with this country? What is wrong? And why is it that we just don't seem to be able to protect ourselves? And when we can't rely on the legal system to help us protect, because they're the ones who've stolen from us as well, it's time to learn what's wrong here. How did we get here? How is it that we're in a completely new community? We don't know anybody, but thankfully we've met a great group of people, like-minded people. But how do you you get to a point, you really do just get to a point where you just go, that's it. I mean, unfortunately, because we still are giving people, we don't hold resentment, we just want to know what is right and what's wrong and what's gone wrong, because this isn't just for us. There are other people out there. I know of one guy who's had his tiny home destroyed. He got arrested and the council came and destroyed his tiny home. He's not the only one. We're not the only ones. This is happening elsewhere. It's even in the newspaper. They gave us pre-warning that this was going to happen. And so, but why? Why are they making us homeless?
And the homeless are in Brisbane, the homeless had all their tents removed. So they're like going, you're homeless, but you can't stay here. Yeah. I even met another old guy. He was living in a car park, and he said the police come to move him on. He goes, I can't afford the fuel to move anywhere, So it's like they're attacking the problem or the symptom, which is homelessness, and ignoring the problem is why we got so many homeless people when they've been hardworking all their lives. Why we got here? But can I ask you another question? This is a bit harder. Now, people are going to say that you're a sovereign citizen. So what do you say to that?
I tend not to acknowledge that really, because I don't want to give it any I don't want to feed that. I don't want to give it any credibility, because we've all heard the terminology. It is definitively an oxymoron. If people know what sovereignty really is, and they know what a citizen is, those two words don't marry. This is a media campaign that's it's targeted and directed for a reason. I try not to give it any credence, any credibility. I won't acknowledge that it's anything, because and I'm certainly not buying into any of that. So it's just a ridiculous term.
So all you'd see yourself as an Australian. You've been here most of your life, or probably all your life, and here you are trying to understand what actual laws do I live under. Now that I'm affected, I want to know, and you're finding that things aren't as they appear on the page.
Well, they're certainly not, and it's the system is a contrived process, and it's not designed to really give us any rights. We think we've got rights, and people talk about the Constitution, and they talk about the Bill of Rights, or they talk about all these sorts of things, but we're defined by the governments as things that can be manipulated, and until we realise that we gain our self-determination from in here, we need to do that. We need to understand who we are and what our purpose is, and it essentially is to live in a harmonious community and care for each other. I mean, where's the caring gone? Where's the community togetherness? This machine keeps trying to divide, and we have to not feed that. We have to make sure we come together, and that's the only way to survive, really.
Anything you want to add to that?
That was pretty well said.
I thought it was well said.
It's really hard to come back from that
But
one.
both of you now, and this is ridiculous, both of you now are on parole.
Yeah.
Or on bail.
Bail.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh, bail, sorry.
Bail, yeah. Bail. I don't know, yeah. I'm on bail. I know, I'm a criminal. And yet, you know, all I'm trying to do is try to work out where everything kind of went wrong. And I'm actually here for the community.
But just back up though. So you've got criminal charges. Do you want to read out the definition of criminality?
Well, a criminal offence is an act that breaks a specific law and is considered a wrong against society as a whole rather than just an individual victim.
So just saying that. So you're on bail as being and you've got criminal charges against you. Apparently.
Yeah.
And yet, just to clarify, all you did was try to get your family out of the cold on land that you've bought and paid for. You own it. So you own the land and you just wanted a shed to get your family out of a dying tent into a shed so they'd be warm in winter.
Yeah.
And now you're on criminal charges.
I'm a criminal.
Where the council could have come along and said, "Oh, look, just pay that fine and we'll figure." But instead,
Yeah, there was no.
they've had you strip search twice.
Yeah. They've taken it straight to. They've just. You know, if anything, it's ruled by the iron fist. Don't bring me into the council office and sit me down. Like, where's that human element gone?
No mediation or anything.
No. I mean, I wrote to them. Why didn't they write back? All they did was threats. It's just threat after threat after threat. I've done the honourable thing. I haven't threatened them. I wouldn't threaten them. I'm a reasonable woman. I've paid my way through my whole life. I've worked hard. You know, I've paid my taxes. I've paid for the land.
So you didn't deserve what happened to you.
Nobody deserves what happened to
But
me.
you didn't deserve
And
what happened.
I didn't deserve it. I didn't do anything to, I sang to them. I was nice to them. I treated them with respect, and I still do. In fact, I would invite them here to do a meditation with horses, because clearly they have an internal battle going on. They have an internal battle because they cannot feel right about that. When I did not consent, there has to be a point where there's an element within them that says, no, I don't really agree with what I'm doing. And I saw it in the eyes of one of those women that I sang to. I saw it in her eyes. She couldn't look at me as though I was a criminal. She can't. They can't. They can't look at me and say you're a criminal. They just can't, because I'm not.
This whole thing about sovereign citizens, I know you don't agree with that, but that's how they're trying to paint you guys. And they're trying to paint it as people that don't want to follow any laws, make up their own laws. That's how it's been sold. But you guys, are thinking that you just want to live out of society, make up your own laws, or you're quite happy to abide by law?
Not at all. All communities need to abide by peaceable laws for the good of all, you know. And that's a functionable element that society needs, you know. So by no means is that what it's about at all. The public law and the public good is what we should be striving for, to care for each other and to, like the 10 Commandments, you know, basically. What you would want to do, how you would want to treat somebody else. That's how you want to be treated.
And that's our public duty. Our actual public duty is to uphold the public law. The only thing is, it's not the public law. The public law is very simple. The public law is just do no harm to others. What harm have I done? So why do we have all these created laws, supposed laws, these rules that we're governed by? They're not right, and they don't belong to us. We the people, have a common law, a proper common law, but they're not using that. Why not?
When I met Jesus Christ, he was almost 10 years old. And he was helping his mother push a trolley full of all they owned. And because they couldn't find an inn they could get in, they were heading to the city and leaving Bethlehem. Couldn't you perform a miracle? I'm out of the meat. So head down.